Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for staying back after lunch. And welcome to the Quiz the Guru session here in Leeds, 19th today of March 2015. The intention of this short period is for you guys in the audience to ask any questions of our experts that we have on this side of the table, covering pretty much any subject that you wish, other than anything that is product specific, because that wouldn't be particularly fair in terms of running down other people's products or picking up somebody else's products. So if we can keep it fairly broad-based, I'd appreciate it. We'll start off going across the panel, and each of them will introduce themselves. I'll start off with myself, Paul Hennings, CEO of IP UserGroup and editor of IPfocus magazine. And I'll then go to David.
David Watts, Director of Sales for EMEA for Razberi Technologies.
Keith Neilson, Independent Security Consultant.
Andrew Denton, Sales Manager for Meyertech Limited, designing and making VMS solutions.
Paul Stanborough, Managing Director of Aditech Limited, Biometric Solutions.
Okay, so we'll kick off by asking if there's any questions from the audience that you'd like to ask these guys right from the outset. And a stunned silence, which isn't uncommon.
Can I ask a question? Are there any EU regulations that describe what you can and cannot do with biometrics regarding personal conditions?
The data storage laws are interpreted by each country individually. So yes, there is data protection within the EU. The UK interprets it one way. A lot of countries interpret another way and put the data actually onto a smart card. So no biometric data per se is distributed around to various remote points. Obviously there is still a central storage, but it's not kept in databases. So it depends on which country you're in. There's no different countries interpret the law differently.
Okay, any other questions from the floor? No? Well, perhaps I can throw one in and to ask right the way across the board here, and maybe starting with David. In your view, what is slowing the pace of deployment of IP video?
I think there's a number of factors. I think there's a perception that IP is more expensive than alternatives, whether they be analog or a combination of sort of the old digital systems. And in some cases that perception is true. However, if the system is designed specifically around IP to leverage the benefits of IP, I think it doesn't have to be more expensive. I think one of the other challenges is the education piece. I think there's still a long way to go with many of the sort of legacy installers out there that need to invest in training their employees and everything else on how to use and how to deploy IP. It's not simple just to expect them to go out and be experts in it from day one. It's a very different animal to deploying analog systems. So I think the education piece to me is probably the most important factor, and something I think we all collectively try to work with to sort of drive that piece forward. But to me, that's probably the most limiting factor in terms of the growth.
Thank you. Now, Keith, your view is from a slightly different perspective.
Strange enough, I would agree with David there. I believe that's absolutely right. I don't believe that it's necessarily more expensive. It depends on the application, and it's the right application that would decide it. And if it's the correct application, I do not believe it is any dearer, certainly not in my experience. And to amplify the second part of that, I do believe a lot of contractor, subcontractor, installers don't understand it properly. They've made no particular effort to go for training for it, and they're frightened of it. They go with what they know and stick with what they know, rather than trying to learn about the new technology, and I think that is the single biggest reason why it's not gone. They're just, people ring up their normal CCTV supplier or security supplier and say, oh yeah, we'll put you this in and we'll hardwire it, because that's what they understand and it works better. And yeah, so same only different, but exactly the same.
Okay. Andrew, your view on this?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what people have been saying. I think understanding of networks is a big issue for a lot of CCTV integrators. They don't have the full knowledge on how to set up the networks correctly. And what tends to happen is people dip the toe in and they try something, and if they haven't set it up quite right, it doesn't work properly, and they think, well, I'm not trying that again. And they back off, they go back to what they know, and there's no sort of pushing forward with it. I think from the other side as well, though, I think there's a reluctance from IT professionals to allow video anywhere near their network, which tends to be a bit of a problem. And it's, you sometimes think if you're going to set up a completely separate network just for the video, then we might as well just put an analog system in anyway.
And presumably the on-viv side of things is making things easier. It's not muddying the water, you don't think?
I think it's making it easier for people to install basic systems. It's not a replacement, certainly, for a well set up network, though. on-viv allows you to connect to cameras and stream video from cameras easily, but it doesn't replace proper setup on the network.
And Paul, your view?
I don't get involved very much, obviously, well, not at all in CCTV, but I can only hear some of the views that have been mentioned. Point one, a lot of the integrators, a lot of the installers, they're not proactive. A customer says, I knew this or knew that, they'll tend to go with what they know. They don't want to move away basically from a tender. If a tender says this, which could be down to perhaps the consultant not looking at it in its entirety, but they like to stick with what they've got. And also we have the same problem with IT networks, in that we get problems because IT within certain organisations, they have such complex IT infrastructures with different IP address locations that they find it difficult to accommodate what they almost refer to as non-essential to them bits of equipment going on their network.
Now we've got somebody here with an IT background. What's your viewpoint on this barrier between effectively the industry that we're looking at here and the IT management?
It's kind of my first day of being exposed, and I have to say that sitting at the top of a couple of large organisations over the last 15 years or so, the issue of film or biometrics hasn't actually landed on my table to deal with. So it probably says it's a bit further away than we think. But IP addressing is an extremely complex topic in large corporations because it's not one IP address network. You've got big international organisations. You've got 20 or 30 different countries to think about. So control of the IP address regime has to sit with one individual, because issuing IP addresses clearly can be completely confusing for a network, because if you have two entities the same IP address, you get really unpredictable results which take ages to track down. So I'm not surprised the IP addressing is kept tight and managed, but I think it's about finding the right people to talk to make these things happen. So if I know, for example, we have certainly in my last company used a lot of video content in the corporate network, and we found a way of making that work, but it's about connecting the right people up. So I think I asked a question about video compression technologies earlier today. I would expect that to be a norm, because video bandwidth is kind of this big. You want it that big. So you don't want it travelling across the network this big to be compressed somewhere else. You want to compress it down, send it lightweight. So there are all these kind of debates that need to be had, I think. but it's about pointing at the right people. It's not an IT board debate. This is a head of technical services discussion. Someone who actually understands the muck and bullets of all of that. But it's all practical stuff. I can't imagine not wanting in a corporate network to have visibility of premises. And I think presented the right way, sold the right way, with a convincing case about what the benefits from doing it. I don't think anyone in the right mind would kind of go, no, I think it's a bad idea. The other side of it is kind of a question back in terms of, as a company looking to get into that debate, what is it you need in your ranks to have someone to have that debate with the technical guys on the other side? And is the industry actually developing those kind of individuals to have that kind of technical networking IP debate? And I think that they're quite expensive individuals. If I look at the normal wages in a guarding or security company, this wage would be pretty big in terms of getting somebody really good. So I can see some of the practical issues that start to come with it. More likely you'd want to contract somebody from time to time to help with a difficult project in terms of trying to map that out, but it's someone who can talk to their equivalents on the corporate side.
Maybe I can run that across the panel here. Do we believe that there is a reluctance to partner up with people to gain additional skills, as opposed to either recruit or train? What do you think, David?
Well, I think it's a very valid point, because I can talk from first-hand experience. You see a massive divide from, like, what I would call traditional security versus IT salaries, and I suspect that will be the case for quite some time to come. I actually thought the gap would have narrowed by now, but I've been involved for over 20 years, and frankly it probably has narrowed slightly, but certainly not as much as I would have expected.
Just for a number on it, to get a very good network technician in the south of England would be 60 grand a year.
Yeah. I think certainly in my experience, what we've done more and more when you've got a real IP sale that is true IP, I think what we've seen much more of is the hiring of sales engineers. Some people call them pre-sales, call them what you will, who are more savvy in IT sort of IT speak, if you like, so that when us lowly salespeople go to meetings and we run out of our technical knowledge, which is different for some of us more than others, there's somebody there that can speak speeds and feeds and the megabits per second and all the other stuff that the IT people need to know, which is critical for them. But it's beyond probably the traditional sales kind of presence, knowledge base. So I think I've seen a lot more of that happening, certainly, and I think that will happen more and more as time moves on.
I do think as well that from a project point of view, you need someone who develops and is the owner of the solutions design. Because that is about meeting what is this problem I'm trying to fix? Does the solution design fix it economically? So again, having as a security company working with someone or someone who works for you has to be confident at doing that kind of work, and that's not easy work.
I take your general point that there is a lack of expertise in, for want of a better
I'm not saying there is, I'm asking
a network engineer. I do think currently where the experts lie are in software companies that specialise in monitoring compression software, and they are obviously then biased towards their particular software offering. But there are some good companies out there that once you've checked them out are worth going with, who will offer that kind of service, but there are very, very few in my experience, if any. I'm desperately trying to think of one at the minute with a major CCTV company anyway that would have that kind of absolute knowledge.
So that's probably holding it back as much as anything.
Does none of the larger companies invest in undergraduate students at that level? Perhaps launch a programme where you pay their university fees at £9,000 a year and then tie them into a 5-year contract on graduation. Some of these people would be first-class graduates, so you're saving yourself money by investing in them earlier, not quite proving yourself, but clearly, you know, these are the first class graduates.
I've actually said there is certainly an organisation I know of in this part of the world actually who is running like an academy where they are training graduates. But I think the challenge is that you've got, you know, there's, depending on who you talk to, around 4,000 installers in the UK. So there's a lot of legacy people out there that don't have the knowledge and the skills. And that's the challenge. It's bringing those guys up to speed with what they need, you know, with even just a basic level of IP knowledge so that they have the skills they need to go and do their job. And that's, you know, for the new guys coming through, that's fantastic. You know, graduates and stuff, I think we'd all kind of applaud that activity. But, you know, what do we do for the guys who are doing it today already that just don't have the skills? Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a parallel as well that I've mentioned in the past. The business machines industry, you know, printers, scanners, copiers, and that sort of thing. They went through a transition, which is not dissimilar to what we're looking at here. 10, 15 years ago, I suppose, where sort of multifunctional devices, everything went on the network. But the political will within the enterprises was such, because the benefits were so evident of moving on to networks scenarios, that everybody got trained up, the manufacturers got involved, the leasing companies who were offering copy plans and all those wonderful things all those years ago, they got involved and they took the whole industry forward, all in one go. Now, I don't see the security industry having the same sort of attitude,
I mean,
and also, you know, the funding.
Yeah, as a company, my background is as an academic, and we're looking at partnering with universities and getting the top class business students, even master's degree level students that are international students, and getting them to work on board with us in their own country on a part-time basis. But what they can bring back to us is just huge in their own country.
I think I don't think security and surveillance is particularly sexy. I don't see people choosing it as a career.
Would anybody believe I'm a zoologist?
Yes, because you told me yesterday.
Exactly, you know, it's not about
But you know, there is, you know, it is potentially quite a sexy industry in terms of what's going on moving forward. When you start looking at the non-security applications of IP video, then suddenly it's a very, very creative environment. But it's again, it's going out and being able to evangelise into the academic environment and say, well, actually, there's loads going on in this environment and you really should be getting involved. Whereas if you said, well, we're looking for people to come along and help out and learn about CCTV and security, then I think probably wouldn't get particularly good press. I think there's an issue, you know, going back to what is an engineer in the UK now.
My question was prompted by a student that I had in boarding school that had excellent grades at A level and was offered a place on a physics degree at Oxford University. She was an international student, not from the EU, and the fees were £30,000 per year. And her family were delighted that she'd got in, but whether she could go on or not was another matter. So I said, right, contact the Institute for Physics in your own country, see if they'll sponsor you and pay your fees at Oxford, and work for them afterwards. And it just would have been a great shame if she'd not gone. However, a fellow student of hers, he was in business, and he stepped in and said, right, I'll sponsor her, because it's an amazing opportunity. She's going to be great. She's gotten at Oxford, and you know she'll do well. But if somebody hadn't taken her on at this level and paid those fees, then you've got a pretty good investment for your business.
I think one of the challenges you've got though is security. It's a little bit like insurance. It's a bit of a grudge purchase for some people.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something that you yearn to have. You install it because you need it to protect your premises, people, resources, whatever it might be. So I think that's one of the other reasons it's the adoption of IP, which typically can cost more money. You know, there's always that reluctance because you know people quite often put in the bare minimum they have to put in. So you know, they might be doing that for compliance. You know, we've done some work recently with off licenses who have to have a certain level of security as a bare minimum to get their license. But they're not doing it because they aspire to have the best system on the market. They do it because it's a tick in the box for them to be able to sell alcohol. You know, so there's always that element to overcome as well, beyond what they have to have as a bare minimum and what they might aspire to have to give them an enhanced level.
I think from a university point of view as well, whenever you've got young people and students, it's a bit of safeguard initially as well. You know, you're not allowed to just visit the students and photograph them, publish that anywhere. And so I think
No, they do that for themselves. Totally uncontrolled.
God bless Facebook.
Yeah, but you're not actually bundled.
I think you actually put your finger on it, because I started off in the business machine world for about a year, and the major players in that, Canon, Ricoh, you know them, they were absolutely specific in providing all of what you're talking about. And if you really want this resolved, I think you need to go back, if you can, to the manufacturers and say, you have to, if you want to compete, you're going to have to do this, because the base we have out there is engineers who are, shall we say, past it, because their education was in a former generation, and they need help. My advice would be, is there a way that you can actually create a central pool where these normal engineers, when they get confronted with the techie guy, can actually say, I can't help, but I know a man who can, who's not actually part of us, but he's there for us all. And therefore, if you can share your resources to pay that, you actually have a pool of skilled people sitting there and able to resolve these
I think
is that a way forward?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's always been a reluctance to partner.
Oh,
A reluctance to do that sort of thing because of being, you know, very, very protective of their client. Effectively.
Yeah, one of the other challenges as well that I've seen in that scenario is a lot of the manufacturers will train these guys either for free or they'll charge a fee, but they'll give it back off product, because there's a lot of people that type kickers out there. But of course, the installation businesses still need to take their guys off the road, so there is a cost to them, and that's a reluctance at their end. I mean, if the manufacturers are providing the training for free, which, you know, typically the company do much more than to do that. There still needs to be an investment at the engineering organisation end, who says, well, we're going to put X amount of engineers through and have these, you know, these champions, if you like, within the business. We can't train everybody, at least let's have a small number, and I think that's one of the, you know, still a reluctance out there to sort of see that move forward.
I think the other problem is the other thing is what you said is right. Security is not sexy. It's not even something which you want. It is something you have to have by no choice. Most people. Therefore, it's an expense you don't need to consider. I mean, before enough, I've been for years, and I'm looking to open a restaurant. But I'm actually trying to turn around the biometrics into something which adds value, as opposed to as non-security, it's lifestyle. And then I've changed the parameters, so that's what we can do. But I agree with you totally, because the other problem is that the installers are making money. And it's in a very cutthroat world, which no one ever needs, so they're always going to go, what's the cheapest deal, what's the cheapest price, you know, how can I get my security cheaper, and how can I reduce my capital budget, because I don't really want it, I'm only having to put it in. And there aren't many customers who are gleefully knocking on doors saying, I want the best security. So I sympathise.
And then you've got manufacturers now who are driving prices down. You have the Chinese manufacturers backed by the Chinese government who are trying to flood the market with cheap products. And that just drives everybody's profits down, and you've not got as much in the pot to put into the
Can I just add
trade.
that we do a lot of business in the Middle East, and myself and Dave just come back from Oman, and the feeling that we got there was that British products speak volumes. Anything that's quintessentially British speaks volumes. They don't want products from China, but British products then. I think that's a positive for all of us, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of the world that thinks like that.
No, but certainly we do. Our key markets are the Middle East and West Africa, and those two markets love the UK and everything about it.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely buy more expensive British products than Chinese products in both of those markets, given the Chinese market.
Going back to the original question, I do think the structure of the security industry, particularly electronically, is the major problem. Is there has been an exponential growth in private subcontractors who do work for the big companies, and just like they say, they've got to go off the road if they want this training, they want to, and it's almost become the norm now, rather than the big firms having huge engineering staff, but very small supervisory engineering staff, and they subcontract everything out to an amazing level, to my mind. And it's the small guys that, you know, that maybe 2-3 man firm and a few mates that are also subcontractors that they can bring in on big jobs, and they really haven't got the facility and the time to upgrade their skills, and without it being on the back of a big contract, which are in the hands of the big suppliers who then take these subcontractors on.
What I was meaning was, I mean, I've not mentioned this or anything, but if we took Aditech, which is why we're here today and what we're interested in, then I would immediately be looking at the universities in the said country that we were going to. What students have we got that specialise in this field, and train them at that level to take over any maintenance or work with Paul on that, because Paul doesn't want to go to wherever and do it all, so we need to train. We need to train these young people, and I would deal with the education side of things and make sure that there's a solid foundation based in that country with young graduates that are enthusiastic and more than capable.
Yeah, I think the angle here is that the security may be not sexy, and it's very low key because it's low level security. It's not high level like your McAfee's, but the sexy bit is the IP. Therefore, the young graduate students, that's what's sexy to them because that's the leading stuff. So if you can sell that, you're tapping that into the security. That's the important thing. It's the IP, and that's where you're going to get these brains coming in because they see developing. That's the way forward. So if they can come in now, I mean, maybe they're not going to be with security, shall we say, with full art, but they're taking IP off the very fast.
And they're building their CV and their profile.
Well, security is only one application. You know, at the end of the day, you're recording images, and those images have got all sorts of value in different areas. You know, in retail, surveillance footage is being used for all sorts of things. You know? And then it moves away from a very low budget environment where it's, you know, well, these days it's not even bothered whether people are stealing. They're more concerned about people who say they've fallen over on a web page because that's 30 grand as opposed to 50p. You know, but as profiling becomes more sophisticated, and the use of analytics, whether it be that facial recognition or gender or race or whatever it may be, and profiling people in a retail environment, all that information is available from the video content, which you've already got because you're doing it using it for other purposes at the time. The same with integration with point of sale, so it's looking at fraud and that sort of thing. So you've got marketing opportunities. You can identify which way people are going using existing analytics that you've got in a security environment to see which way people are moving up and down the aisles. For instance, the analytics have already been written for that, but that wasn't the purpose of them. The purpose, you know, tripwires and those sort of things, they were for something else. But now the application shifts because somebody's had a good idea. And this is an environment where there's potentially loads of good ideas. And they are now becoming available to us because the data is becoming available to us, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Well, and also going back to the original question of when you have particularly large organisations, and I think it becomes, and it's an evolution thing of the current security management within a large organisation have yesterday's technology in their brain. I still prefer a key, but their security organisation within a large company is their own little kingdom. Then you have the IT people, and one particular company which I can't say, but the integrator that works for the security side of this company, when they proved that it wasn't the security equipment, it was an IT problem, they go, yes, we got one over on them. And that is the mentality still.
Yeah, I can echo that. Yeah.
The other thing is, if you look at security, I'm talking to a guy who's 20 and a half years of age, and he will tell you that he's now been offered one of the best jobs in the world because he is a hacker, higher security. And it's a different level. So what you're saying is exactly right. You know, you're dealing with old school security people who are heads of groups who are very old school, physical, and you've got a 19-year-old who can run around and say, "Don't stupid, I'll show you how to break this. That's how you do it." And it's a complete generation. So to be fair, exactly what you said about photocopiers, they went through that real growing pains and that change and adaptation around about the mid-90s. And now, to be fair, they're almost a throwaway out. They don't have the engineering. But when in my day, loads of engineers out there. Unfortunately, engineers are so valuable.
But I think the other thing in the business machinery side of things was that if you were a leasing agency or something like that doing, who were effectively the installer, if you like, unless you've got certified engineers, you didn't get the kit. If you didn't get the kit, then you didn't get a customer, and if you didn't get a customer, you didn't get paid. So, and that was the manufacturers saying, if you're not certified, if we don't certify you, then we're not going to give you the next model because you need to be certified for it. Well, the political will throughout that whole environment, the whole industry, was we need the new kit. We're going to have to take it on the chin in terms of time and effort and getting our engineers up to speed. Otherwise, we're just not going to get the stuff that we need. And somebody else is, and they're going to get the business, and that's it. It's all finished. Skills are fundamentally important. Engineering skills in the UK, particularly, I think.
There are skills in the industry, though. It's just a case of how the manufacturers team up to utilise them. There are companies like Comnet and Silvernet who can design networks and do that side of it. It's just a case of whether people go and speak to them. And I think it's down to manufacturers to get together and work with people like Comnet, and bring them in onto jobs to make sure that expertise is within that. Within the job, within the project.
Well, certification generally, in the network, in the IT environment, Cisco certified and Microsoft certified people. You don't get anywhere unless you've got that level of certification if you want to move forwards. In the security industry, BTECs and various other lower qualifications are out there. But they're not really. So people like Tabcom are doing their best to raise the bar, but at the end of the day, it's an attitude issue as opposed to fundamentally a skills issue, I think. Anyway, on that note, we've been chatting for the last 45 minutes, and I appreciate everybody's time. I think we'll draw a line under it now. Thanks very much for your contributions from the audience, and thank you very much, panel. The next event is in Liverpool on the 4th of June, if you'd like to join us there. Thank you very much.